The Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura, California presents a homily by UU Church of the Verdugo Hills minister Casey Slack titled You Have to Ride the Wave, recorded on Sunday morning, July 26, 2020.
I've had a song stuck in my head for the past several months. Okay, it's not actually a whole song. Mostly it's just the introduction to a song. The track, like this service, is called You Have to Ride the Wave, and it comes from one of Queens-based Punjabi American rapper Heems's simultaneously released first solo albums. These albums were released after the dissolution of the group Das Racist, which had found popularity with catchy, silly songs like Combination Pizza Hut and Taco Bell, leaving the actually quite political group members, Heems and Kool-A.D, feeling unheard. You Have to Ride the Wave comes off of Heems's more explicitly political album, Nehru Jackets, which includes a track called NYC Cops, in which Heems recounts famous and more obscure instances of police brutality in New York City. You Have to Ride the Wave is actually not my favorite track on the album. It is sonically dissonant and, with two featured artists, lacks the sort of clarity I enjoy most in the rest of the album. But the intro has been sort of inescapable for me lately. In a distorted, lo-fi sounding voice over a slow but building electronic beat comes the voice of Arundhati Roy, the Indian author, essayist, and activist best known for her book, The God of Small Things. She says, "And we grew up outside the realm of all protections that society chose to offer its members. And so, at a very young age, one was aware of the fact that you were not going to be given these protections. And you had to constantly try to understand what was going on and how to survive in this space and how not to go under. You're on your own, and then politics is in your life. You have to ride the wave." This clip comes from a conversation Arundhati Roy had with Howard Zinn, during which they're talking about how Roy became political, the way in which politics entered her life as a child, due to her experience as the child of a woman who made some unorthodox choices in a rather orthodox world. Politics enters all of our lives at a variety of moments. Maybe for you, it first happened when you were 3 or 5 or 25 or 50. But whenever politics first arrived in your life, it is certainly here now. There is no escaping the press of the political on our lives when, as hospital workers continue to fall ill from lack of appropriate protective equipment and bodies pile up around the country, elected officials continue to open up our cities and our states. The world is broken open. The quiet part, the genocidal undertones of years of right-wing capitalist policy are being said louder and louder each day. Politics is in our lives, and many of us, especially those already occupying marginalized and vulnerable positions in our society will not be offered much in the way of protection. We have to learn to ride the wave together. In an article on Vox, writer, historian, and activist Rebecca Solnit wrote, "Disasters shake us up. You are suddenly aware of ephemerality and interdependence, the fleetingness of all things, and the connection of all things." She continues, "It is interesting how disaster does what activists are always trying to do. It points out contradictions. How does the medical system actually function? Who does it leave behind? How does the economic system actually function? Who does it leave behind?" In the aftermath of something like this, the answers are so clear. Who benefits from the status quo is clear. And so, Solnit says, you'll always have the winners of the old system pushing hard to reassemble it after it is shattered in front of our eyes. So the status quo is dead. The rest of us are saying, let's go forward. Let's not go back. Let's go another way. And here, in going another way, in learning to ride the wave together, is where it gets spiritual for me. There are two concepts which live very close together in my heart. First comes from a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, which you could find in any of our gray hymnals. He says, "A person will worship something, have no doubt about that. We may think our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will come out. That which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and our character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship. For what we are worshiping, we are becoming." The second concept is the idea of the effervescence of God, as explained in the Mimamsa tradition of Hindu philosophical thought. From the Mimamsa perspective, as I studied it with Dr. Purishmata Bilmora during our mutual time at the Graduate Theological Union, from this perspective, one of the main purposes of ritual is to pull God or gods or aspects of God into the world. You chant or do a ritual or pray or take any other sort of repetitive action as a means of allowing God to bubble up into the world. This concept stuck out to me and sticks with me, both because it is conceptually beautiful. This idea of pulling God into the world, allowing the divine to bubble up, to effervesce like a sparkling drink on a warm day. That is beautiful as metaphors go. But I also like it because it leaves us with some responsibility. God, the divine, the universe, however we want to call it, has a lot of different aspects and can do or inspire us to do a lot of different things. We're responsible for which things we do. We're responsible for which things we are worshiping, which things we are pulling into existence, which things we are becoming. Learning how to ride the wave together figuring out how to direct ourselves so that the crashing of politics into our lives does not simply drown us, and learning how to do that in a way that means something other than survival for those of us given water wings and swimming lessons from birth, requires us to think hard about what it is that we are worshiping, which aspects of the divine, of the power of the universe, of the creative force of nature we pull into our world. To think about who we have been becoming, and maybe then make a new choice. I wonder often about what the ruins of this society might look like to future historians. Which things a future archaeologist might decide we worshipped. Across the country and around the world, many of our biggest and most elaborate spaces are dedicated to commerce. The remains of the New York Stock Exchange, for example, might look to future historians like a place where people came together to worship and hopefully be blessed by their god, the market. Malls, Amazon warehouses, billboards, and all manner of other shopping-oriented spaces might also look like places of worship. Signs and stores of where items of pseudo-magical importance could be purchased by devotees hoping to be given favor after making an offering to the god called capitalism. And what has worship of money, markets, possessions, and capitalism brought us? A hierarchy-obsessed world where we make and burn through things like if resources were endless and trash actually disappeared once it was out of our homes. It's led us to every young marginalized person I know passing around the same $20, hoping to keep each other fed until tomorrow, while 540 Americans sit on top of more money than they could spend in a lifetime. Some of them so much money that they couldn't spend it in several lifetimes. It's led to people refusing to go to the hospital even now because they would never get out from under the medical bills. It looks like a federal government still more concerned about the economic and political impact of this pandemic than about the actual impact of now over 100,000 dead Americans. This is all really heavy. So let's take a moment to center and to dream. Centering and dreaming are necessary to our survival in more ways than one. If you are caught underwater, pulled in by a tide you didn't expect or one you simply couldn't avoid, the first thing to do is to resist your urge to panic. Now, in our actual situation, being not literally underwater most of the time, we can actually allow ourselves some time to panic if we need it. But right now, let's focus on the next steps. The next step is to center, to remember where and who you are, and to give yourself the opportunity to dream about how it will be once you get back up on the surfboard. I invite you in this moment to position your body in a way that helps you feel grounded. Maybe that's with your feet on the floor, maybe it's standing, maybe it's with your legs crossed or with a hand over your heart. Whatever it is that feels grounding for you, find that position and take a moment to breathe. From this centered place, I invite you to begin to dream. It is 2620, 600 years from now, and you are a starship's archaeologist, and your team is returning to Earth to learn more about the early 21st century. You have been tasked with excavating a long forgotten portion of the old United States of America. It is expected that in this place, you will find items suggesting the priorities of the humans of the early 21st century. You're searching through books and billboards, letters, statues, buildings, records, anything really that tells the tale of how people in this little part of the world handled unprecedented challenges and ultimately paved the way for the mostly peaceful space exploring life that you now live. Your search takes you eventually to a warm and beautiful spot up on a mountain a few miles outside the still bustling region of New San Angeles. You've read that there was a camp there where people of faith, then called Unitarian Universalists, would gather. These people are known to have played key roles in providing material support during the tumultuous years of the 2020s, and to have in their thinking laid some of the groundwork for the society in which you now live, where each person is provided with the resources and opportunities, material, emotional, and spiritual, that they need to grow and be loved into their own best selves. Breathe in the still, crisp mountain air. On the ground, you see the corner of a mostly buried object. Pick it up and see what it is. Dream about how it might have come to be. Is it a youth camp covenant that leads the way to a deeper practice of right relationship? Or a letter written between friends or lovers who were separated during the pandemic? Maybe it's a chalice inscribed with words of hope and possibility. Whatever it is, take a moment to hold it in your hands and consider how the actions taken in any given moment can change the course of history. Dear ones, we will never get up on a surfboard in order to ride these waves if we don't spend some time envisioning how we're gonna get up there and dreaming about what it will be like when all of us can weather the vicissitudes of life together in beloved community. We cannot ride the waves if we never learn to dream. We cannot change the course if we never figure out how to act on our dreams. We pull the divine into our world in our repeated words and actions. So let us speak and act in the direction of care, of compassion, of a circle drawn wide and centered around what have traditionally been the margins. Let us leave artifacts that suggest we worship something worthwhile. Let us tend to what we as individuals and a society have become and find ways to become people fully, wonderfully, and fearfully made in the image of love. Amen.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to You Have to Ride the Wave, presented by Reverend K.C. Slack, recorded on July 26, 2020, for the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura, California.